Today on An Apple a Day, we're going to discuss information on invisible disability, disabilities that are not immediately apparent, and include a list of hidden disabilities and conditions. Invisible disabilities can be a chronic illness such as renal failure, diabetes, sleep disorder, fibromyalgia, etc. If those diseases significantly impair your normal daily activities, they're considered a disability. People with some kinds of invisible disabilities such as chronic pain or some kind of sleep disorder are often accused of faking or imagining their disabilities. Today on An Apple a Day, we're going to be discussing that. Please be aware that the comments, views, opinions shared on this podcast are not meant to diagnose a medical problem and/or legal problem. If you do have a medical problem or legal problem, kindly contact a professional.
Welcome to An Apple a Day, a podcast, a resource, a community. Share your experiences and learn from others as we overcome barriers and learn to live a happy, healthy life with a disability. Welcome to the community. Here's your host, Jimmy Apple.
Welcome to another episode of An Apple a Day. I'm your host, Jimmy Apple. An Apple a Day is brought to you by www.famousapple.com. Famousapple.com is the homepage for this podcast. That's www.famousapple.com. And if you want to reach me, you can reach me by email at jimmy@famousapple.com. That's JIMMY@famousapple.com. Now, if you have a question for the administrators of the podcast or the website, you want to look into advertising, or you have a question or a comment, you can reach them at admin@famousapple.com. That's ADMIN@famousapple.com. So how you doing today, my friends? You feeling good? You feeling strong? You feeling better than you have been? You feeling better than you did yesterday? That's excellent. That's excellent. You keeping up with your doctor's appointments and your therapy appointments? Very important. And this time of year with the holidays coming up, sometimes we get lax and we have other things that we think are more important. But believe me, your health is more important than any holiday. So make sure you keep up with those appointments. Make sure you keep up with your prescriptions. Don't run out of medication over the holiday season. You don't want to go to Aunt Jenny's for turkey on Thanksgiving and realize that, oh my God, I don't have my Plavix, or I don't have my Risperidol, or I don't have my Lipitor. You need your prescriptions. You have to make sure that you have your prescriptions, especially with the holidays, especially with the fact that pharmacies close over the holidays. Pharmacists have families too, and they want to spend the holidays with their family too. So just make sure you're up to date on everything. Another thing to check, make sure that your parking permit, your handicap parking permit, is up to date and not about to expire. It's the end of the year. So if it is, make sure you get that renewed. Get to the doctor, have them fill out the forms again for you. Very important. These are very important things. And sometimes you just forget about it because out of sight, out of mind, the parking permit's in the car. You don't need it when you're sitting in your living room. But then when you do need it and you realize, oh my God, it's expired. You don't want to park in a parking space for the handicap with an expired permit. You can get a ticket for that. So make sure you have that up to date, especially if you're going visiting. All right, I have to ask you, have you ever come across somebody that looks at you and thinks that you're faking your disability? Even though you're walking with a cane, or you're walking with crutches, or maybe you're in a wheelchair. I know I've had people look at me and say, what's wrong with you? You're missing a leg. Why don't you have a prosthetic? I've had that question asked of me. First of all, it's nobody's business, but I'll let you know. I don't have a prosthetic because I had a stroke and I can't use the left side of my body. I can't lift up that weight of the prosthetic leg. Anyone that has a prosthetic leg knows how heavy they can be. That's besides the point. What business is it of anyone's, whether you're faking or not? What gives them the right to say that you're faking? Unless they've walked a mile in your shoes, they don't know jack shit about you. What happens, though, is people that have non-visible disabilities get confronted with this 100 times more than those of us that do have visible disabilities. And we're going to talk about this today. I read on my Twitter feed, there was a lady that was so upset. You could tell by her words that she was so upset. She went to a store and she suffers from fibromyalgia. Now, anyone that knows anyone that has fibromyalgia knows the pain that comes along with it. That's like your body's on fire. That's like every nerve in your body is malfunctioning at the same time. If you can fathom that, that's pain. I mean, fibromyalgia is pain above a lot of other things. I've heard people that have fibromyalgia said they'd rather get shot than have a flare-up. But this woman went to a store. She was having a bad day. She wasn't going to the store to go window shopping. She was going to get groceries because it was needed. She used the electric cart in the grocery store, and people were looking at her like, what's wrong with you? Why are you using that? Because you're lazy? People don't realize that non-visible disabilities exist. Unless you have one, they don't realize that they exist. And how dare they? How dare they just assume that somebody is lazy because they're using a piece of durable medical equipment? And that's exactly what those go-karts are, those shopping carts, go-karts. But that's exactly what they are. Those are durable medical equipment. They're not toys. They're not for the lazy. That doesn't mean that they're there for people that just don't want to walk. People that use those, they don't want to use them. I'll be honest with you. I'm telling you this from experience. I'd rather not have to use one of those because I don't like people looking at me like that. And I'm missing a leg, and they look at me like I'm faking it. So just imagine how it feels if you have a non-visible disability such as fibromyalgia. Maybe you have diabetes, and you got peripheral neuropathy from the diabetes, which makes it feel like you're walking on barbed wire or razor wire with the peripheral neuropathy in your feet. Or if you have it in your hands, it's like you're rubbing a ball of barbed wire in your hands. People don't realize. And to assume that somebody's faking, it's just, it adds to our anxiety as a disabled person. We're going to discuss that today. Think about it. Have you ever had it happen to you? What about the people that look at you when you get out of your car? You park in a handicapped spot, you get out of your car, and you walk into a store. We had that fellow Oscar on the podcast a while back, and he was livid when he'd see somebody get out of a car in a handicapped spot and say, they don't need it. They don't need that. If they need a handicapped spot, they shouldn't be going to the store. As handicapped people, we still need to eat. We still need toiletries. We still need toilet paper. Stupid things like that, like everyday needs, we still need them. And if we had the benefit of using a handicapped parking spot to make things just a little bit easier, I say great. Now, I want to tell you something funny about Oscar. All of a sudden, Oscar, who's an over-the-road truck driver, is telling me lately that his back is bothering him. And I can understand that from being in the seat behind the wheel for so many hours a day. And he's been doing it for close to 40 years. And he bounces around. You have kidney problems. You have back problems from bouncing around just. Never mind lifting and unloading and loading and so on and so forth. He actually said to me the other day, he says, I'm thinking about getting a handicap permit for my truck. I said, you gotta be kidding me. He says, my back is killing me. He says, how do I go about it? He's asking me. First of all, I feel, this is just me, if you're capable of driving a truck, climbing in and out of the cab of a truck, loading and unloading a truck, the last thing you need is a handicap permit. If your back is that bad, go see a doctor. You can't have it both ways. Handicap parking permits and these motorized carts and crutches and wheelchairs, these aren't benefits of being disabled. These aren't perks for the disabled. These are necessities. And some people have to realize that. All right, I did some research, like I said, and I found this article on Disabled World, and I'd like to share it with you. What are invisible disabilities? An invisible disability or hidden disability is an umbrella term that captures a whole spectrum of hidden disabilities or challenges that are primarily neurological in nature. Invisible disability or hidden disability are defined as disabilities that are not immediately apparent. Some people with visual or auditory disabilities who do not wear glasses or hearing aids or discrete hearing aids may not be obviously disabled. Some people who have vision loss may wear contacts. A sitting disability is another category of invisible impairments. Sitting problems are usually caused by chronic back pain. Those with joint problems or chronic pain may not use mobility aids on some days or at all. Although the disability creates a challenge for the person who has it, the reality of the disability can be difficult for others to recognize or acknowledge. Others may not understand the cause of the problem if they cannot see evidence of it in a visible way. People with some kinds of invisible disabilities, such as chronic pain or some kind of sleep disorder, are often accused of faking or imagining their disabilities. These symptoms can occur due to chronic illness, chronic pain, injury, birth disorders, etc., and are not always obvious to the onlooker. Invisible disabilities are certain kinds of disabilities that are not immediately apparent to others. It is estimated that 10% of the people in the United States have a medical condition which could be considered a type of invisible disability. Nearly 1 in 2 people in the United States has a chronic medical condition of one kind or another, but most of these people are not considered to be disabled, as their medical conditions do not impair them from their normal everyday activities. These people do not use an assistive device, and most look and act perfectly healthy. According to the Americans with Disability Act of 1990, or the ADA, an individual with a disability is a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, has a record of such impairment, or is regarded as having such an impairment. Generally, seeing a person in a wheelchair, wearing a hearing aid, or carrying a white cane tells us that person may be disabled. But what about invisible disabilities that make daily living a bit more difficult for many people worldwide? Invisible disabilities can include chronic illnesses such as renal failure, diabetes, and sleep disorders if those diseases significantly impair normal activities of daily living. For example, there are people with visual or auditory impairments who do not wear hearing aids or eyeglasses, so they may not seem obviously impaired. Those with joint conditions and problems who suffer chronic pain may not use any type of mobility aids on good days or ever. Another example is fibromyalgia, which is now understood to be the most common cause of chronic musculoskeletal pain. Sources estimate that between 3 and 26 million Americans suffer from this hidden condition. Other types of invisible disabilities include chronic pain. A variety of conditions may cause chronic pain. A few of these reasons may be back problems, bone disease, physical injuries, and any number of other reasons. Chronic pain may not be noticeable to people who do not understand the victim's specific medical condition. Chronic fatigue. This type of disability refers to an individual who constantly feels tired. This can be extremely debilitating and affect every aspect of a person's everyday life. Mental illness. There are many mental illnesses that do qualify for disability benefits. Some examples are depression, attention deficit disorder, schizophrenia, agoraphobia, and many others. These diseases can also be completely debilitating to the victim and can make performing everyday tasks extremely difficult, if not impossible. Chronic dizziness, often associated with problems of the inner ear. Chronic dizziness can lead to impairment when walking, driving, working, sleeping, and other common tasks. People with psychiatric disabilities make up a large segment of the invisibly disabled population covered under the Americans with Disability Act of 1990. Invisible disabilities can also include chronic illnesses such as renal failure, diabetes, and sleep disorders if those diseases significantly impair normal activities of daily living. If a medical condition does not impair normal activities, then it's not considered a disability. 96% of people with chronic medical conditions live with an illness that is invisible. Many people living with hidden physical disabilities or mental challenge are still able to be active in their hobbies, work, and be active in sports. On the other hand, some struggle just to get through their day at work, and some cannot work at all. Here's a list of some of the invisible disabilities that are out there. There's more, but this is just a short list. ADHD, anxiety disorders, allergies, arachnoiditis, Asperger's syndrome, asthma, autism, bipolar disorder, brain injuries, Charcot-Marie tooth disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, chronic pain, celiac disease, Crohn's disease, depression, diabetes, endometriosis, epilepsy, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, fibromyalgia, food allergies, fructose malabsorption, hereditary fructose intolerance, hypoglycemia, inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel syndrome, lactose intolerance, lupus, Lyme disease, major depression, metabolic syndrome, migraines, multiple sclerosis, multiple chemical sensitivity, narcolepsy, personality disorder, primary immunodeficiency, psychiatric disabilities, repetitive stress injuries, rheumatoid arthritis, schizophrenia, spinal disorders, and ulcerative colitis, just to name a few. We can also add to that heart disease, artery disease. The list is huge, but you get the picture, right? This information comes from disabledworld.com. It's a very informative website. But my whole point behind this is that these are legitimate diseases. These are legitimate disabilities that you have, and there is no reason for you to feel guilty about using what you need to help you get around. The ones who should be ashamed are the ones who are using it that don't need it. One of the things that irks me is when I see parents take their kids into a store and they tell their kids, go ahead, take the go-karts. They're not go-karts, they're electric shopping carts, but take the go-karts and have fun. I've seen that happen in Walmart more times than I care to remember, where you see little kids zipping through the aisles and they're playing bumper cars. Meanwhile, there's people struggling to get into the store to get what they need and get out. It's just not right. And people have to be aware. They have to be aware that people actually do need these go-karts. They do need the handicapped parking spots. Something that has to happen is there has to be some sort of education, some sort of teaching, and let it start at home. Parents, teach your kids that people with disabilities have every right to go into a store or go into a building, that tools for people who are disabled are not toys. Wheelchairs are not toys. Electric shopping carts are not toys. Teach this to your children. Would you let your kids go onto a construction site and start playing with backhoes and earth movers? No, you wouldn't. Those are tools. The electric carts, they're tools. Wheelchairs, they're tools. If you want to let your kid play in an electric cart, buy him one. If you want to let him play in a wheelchair, God knows why, go buy him one. But don't take them away from people who need them. Don't let your kids get away with taking away from people who need them. And the same thing goes for the stores, the employees in the stores. How many times have you gone into a Walmart? Again, and I hate to keep on bad-mouthing Walmart, but this is where most of the problems happen that I see. I see employees. They're on their breaks. They're sitting on the motorized shopping carts. They're riding them around. Yeah, that's right. I've been to the Walmart on Merrick Boulevard up in Fishkill, and I've seen the employees playing on them. I've seen homeless people sleeping on them. Have some respect for the people with disabilities that need these. The stores are good enough to offer them. It should be up to the employees to make sure that they're available to the people that need them. The same thing with the parking. If you see somebody parked in a handicapped parking spot that doesn't have a placard or doesn't have a license plate, call the police. Make a report. These are the responsibilities of the store employees. Something else I want to point out. It's nice that the electric carts are at the store, but they're not there solely out of the goodness of the heart of the store owner. They're there to help improve the bottom line for them. They're making it accessible for handicapped people to be able to shop at their store so that they can spend money at their store. So there's a profit thing in the works also. And it should be common sense for the employees that to bring up the profit margin, make sure that the carts are available for those who need them and not being used as some kind of toy. Now, here's something else. It's up to us as individuals with disabilities. We have to speak up for ourselves. We can't expect other people to do it for us if we're not willing to do it ourselves. We have to speak up. You see someone abusing these electric carts in a store? Call the manager of the store. You have every right to do that. You see somebody parked in a handicap spot, the sign says handicap permit required, okay? If there's no permit or no handicap license plate on the vehicle, call the police. You have to stand up for your rights, and that's your right as a disabled person. Enough, don't let people make you feel less of a person. We, as members of the disabled community, have to make people realize that we're not disposable and we're not less important than anyone else in society. We can't let people just push us aside. So believe me, when you do go into a store and you do have to use an electric shopping cart, or you do have to use a wheelchair, or you're using a cane, or you're using crutches or a walker, don't let anyone look down on you. Don't accept it. And you don't have to explain to anyone what your disability is. That's none of their business. That's your business. So please, keep your head held high. You're not less of a person because you have a disability. Whether it's visible or non-visible, you have it, you have to deal with it. It's nobody else's business. And don't ever feel bad for dealing with your disability. Don't let anyone make you feel bad. If they look down their nose at you, tell them to stick it up their ass. That's what I do. Remember that, my friends. You're important. You're a person. You're not a disabled person. You're just a person that has some disability. And don't let anyone make you feel less than who you are. Remember that, my friends. And something else to remember, things can always be worse. Right now, somewhere, someone is wishing that they were in your position. So things can always be worse. Listen, thank you very much for stopping by today. I really appreciate it. If you get a chance, you might want to share this with some people. I know we went a roundabout way to it, but this is all today. This is all about you keeping your head held high. You are a person. Be proud of who you are, and don't let anybody make you feel bad about what you have to do to get by. Just remember that. You've been listening to An Apple a Day. My name is Jimmy Apple. I'll talk to you next week, my friends.
Thanks for listening to An Apple a Day with Jimmy Apple, your gateway to a happy, healthy life. Join our community at www.famousapple.com. See you next time.